All right, well, it's about a minute after noon, so I guess we can go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Tom Ray, and I'm a lead forecaster here at the National Weather Service office in Louisville. I've been at the Louisville office for about 15 years. I've been in the Weather Service for almost 28 years, be 28 years next month. CoCoRaHS is something that I've been involved in for about 10 or 12 years now. It's a fantastic program. I always encourage people who are interested in weather to look into it and see if it's something that they'd be interested in. So this presentation today is just going to be a real quick intro to the program. We're not going to get into any real detailed information or get down into the weeds. This is just going to be kind of an overview of the program to see if it's something that might interest you out there. One of the reasons we're giving this presentation to our ambassadors is because we like for our ambassadors to be what we call force multipliers. We like our ambassadors to take information from us and then spread that information into the public. So if you see this presentation today and think that there are some people who you know who might be interested in CoCoRaHS, we'd appreciate it if you could pass that along to them and tell people in your circles about the program. So CoCoRaHS stands for Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, kind of a funny acronym, CoCoRaHS. There we go. So what is this program? We're up to many thousands of volunteers now. It's been around for quite a while, and we're up to thousands of volunteers, mostly across the United States, but there are some in Canada and the Bahamas as well, taking primarily rain measurements and some snow measurements every morning, using very simple, basic equipment that anybody can use and understand easily. And then they send their report into CoCoRaHS via the website or via the app. I've been a member of CoCoRaHS myself since about 2008, so I have my rain gauge, like we see pictured here. I have my rain gauge in my backyard. And I go out each morning, or the mornings that I remember or have time, and read my rain gauge, and I send in my report either through the website or through an app that I have on my phone. CoCoRaHS is a wonderful program. It gives such a great density of data to anyone who needs to use it, such as the National Weather Service, for example. We know that precipitation can vary a lot from one distance to the next, for one location to the next. We see in this aerial photograph here on the right how this little local shower is giving a nice soaking to some people, and other people are still high and dry. And on the lower left, those red diamonds show where we have official weather observing equipment, mostly at airports. And you can see how sparse that is. I mean, a lot of counties don't have any observing equipment at all that's been implemented either by the National Weather Service or the FAA at airports. Whereas in the middle lower part of the screen there's a picture of Jefferson County, Kentucky. And all of those little blue dots with the codes next to them, all of those are CoCoRaHS observers. All of those are volunteers in Jefferson County who send in their precipitation information. So you can see we've got more, let's see, I didn't do an actual count, but it looks like we've got more CoCoRaHS observers in one county than we do official observing equipment across all of central Kentucky and southern Indiana. So it quickly becomes apparent how good of a program this is to give us that data density so we can really get a good feel for the rain and snow that have fallen across the area. Lots of people use CoCoRaHS. I won't go down through that whole list there, of course, but the National Weather Service here in Louisville and other National Weather Service offices across the country are a primary user of this information. And each morning, usually by 10 or 11 o'clock, we produce these maps that we see here on the right. So all three of these maps are available every day, and going back a few years as well, on our website. And look at the top map up there. There's Jefferson County with all those observations, very tight, dense network of observations. And so it's with these CoCoRaHS rainfall reports that we're able to produce these maps. And other entities use this information as well, as you can see there on the bulleted list. Equipment-wise, you don't need a whole lot to participate. Really, technically, all you actually need is the rain gauge that we show on the left side of the screen there. And you can get away with just that. Now, if you would like to measure snow as well, which we certainly appreciate, all you need for that is a ruler. And, you know, most people have a ruler. And then in the middle there is what we call a snowboard, All that is a piece of plywood that's been painted white. But you don't even necessarily need that to measure snow. It's nice to have, but it's not required. I don't have one in my yard, for example. All I do is just read my rain gauge and use my ruler to measure the snow. And that's it for the basic program. You can go beyond that and do other things if you want to get more involved, but from a basic entry level, this is all you need. So what do we do? All right, well, each morning, preferably around 7 a.m., go outside and read your rain gauge. Now, we understand that not everybody can do that at 7 a.m. You're all volunteers, so whatever data we can get, whenever we can get it, we're appreciative of. But it's nice if we can have the observations all taken around the same time so that the amounts agree with one another. So like if I take my observation at 6 a.m. and it hasn't rained yet, so I send in a 0, but then someone else takes their observation at maybe 10:30 a.m. and a thunderstorm has moved through and they got half an inch of rain, then that 0 and that half an inch will both get plotted at the same time on the same map, even though the observations were actually not taken at the same time. So we like to try to avoid that if we can, and have people take their observation around the same time. Around 7 a.m. is preferred. Looking at the picture on the right there, when reading the rain gauge, you'll see what is called a meniscus. And the meniscus is how the water curves up on the sides of the rain gauge. So as you look at that picture of the gauge, the bottom of that meniscus is at about, 0.67, but the top of it is at 0.68. So what you would report would be at the bottom. So you would report a 0.67. You report your rainfall amount at the bottom of that meniscus. All right, so I've gone out into my backyard, I read my rain gauge, and I emptied the rain out of it so that it's ready to go for the next rainfall. And I either go back inside and get on my computer and go to CoCoRaHS.org and enter my observation of however much rain I received, or just go on my phone and tap the app and enter my observation there. And that includes zeros. So the example we have here is actually a 0 amount, and those are important too. We want to know when it doesn't rain also, because it's important to know how dry things are getting if we're getting into a drought. So we appreciate 0 reports as well. Snow, most people do measure snow, although it's not required. So if there is snow, then that morning when I'm going out for my 7 a.m. reading, I would measure how much snow has fallen in the last 24 hours. And then I would also measure how much snow is on the ground. And I would go ahead and include those numbers in my report. As for snow that falls in the gauge, I notice that the little rain gauge that used to be on the inside is now no longer there. Let's go back to the picture. Where is it? There it is. So on the left-hand side, there's actually 2 tubes. So you have the outer tube and the inner tube. And then at the top of that inner tube is a funnel that funnels the rain into it. So if we go back here, when there's snow, we want that inner tube to be out of there, and we want the funnel to be out of there because those are just going to get clogged up with snow. So when it snows, we just have that big outer tube there. And then with the snow that's fallen into that big outer tube, we want to know how much liquid is in that. Or in other words, if that had fallen as rain, how much rain would that have been? So I would bring that snow, that tube, the whole thing, take it off the mount and bring it inside and melt down the snow and see how much liquid water I get out of that snow. So as you can see, taking snow measurements does take a little extra time and a little extra effort, and so we understand that people don't have the time or the interest to do that, which is why I say, well, at least measuring rain is like the main thing that we do. But if you have the time and the energy to measure snow, we sure appreciate it. Other things you can report if you want to go a little further, you can report hail. We appreciate that. Particularly heavy rain rates, there's a way to submit a report if you've got, like, say, an inch of rain in 20 minutes. That's good for us to know, especially at the Weather Service here, where we're responsible for issuing flood warnings, flash flood warnings. The liquid equivalent of snow on the ground. So in addition to melting down that snow that's in that big plastic gauge, I could also take what we call a core sample. So I could turn that big plastic gauge upside down, stick it down into the snow, and then pull out a plug of snow, basically, off the ground, bring that inside and melt that down and see how much water is in there. Because it's important to know how much water is in the snowpack for spring flood reasons. Now in southern Indiana and central Kentucky, snowpack isn't quite as important, but it becomes very important when you get into places like the Upper Plains, for example, or the Rockies, where spring snowmelt is a very significant part of the spring flood season. And then evaporation rates I have written down there as well. Evaporation rates are not done by very many people because the equipment for the evaporation pan is, well, it's not actually a pan, it's a gauge. But to do evaporation rates is pretty expensive. So not a lot of people do that because the equipment is pricey. So as that list goes on, you get kind of into more esoteric stuff. But the 24-hour rain or snow amount, total snow on the ground, those are the things that most observers report on a daily basis. Those are the more regular, normal things that we talk about. Now we understand that you're not a slave to your rain gauge and that we take vacations or we get sick or whatever, and we aren't necessarily able to read the rain gauge every day. And that's okay. So if you're away from your gauge, like if you're on vacation for a week, when you come back, you can go out and see how much rain is in your gauge and report that one amount for the week that you were gone. So we don't expect you to try and figure out how much rain fell on Monday, how much rain fell on Tuesday while I was gone. You can just report that whole bulk amount and move on. Now all of your reports are saved on the website. So you can go back and look at any data you want to as long as you've been taking observations. This site here that I'm showing on the right, Anchorage 2.8 Northeast, that's actually me. And there's some observations there, for example, from May of 2010. And I started doing this in, let's see, it was either 07 or 08. So I can go back all the way to there, and I can get reports made, and I can look at my precipitation data, snowfall data, whatever data I happen to have in there, and take a look at that. And that is important for people who have gardens, for example, who are interested in how their gardens have fared in years past, and it can come in handy. So signing up for CoCoRaHS is easy. We just go to CoCoRaHS.org, and on the left side near the top of the website is a link that says Join Us, and click on there and fill out the form, and that's all you got to do to sign up. There's training available on their YouTube site, YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/CoCoRaHS. There's a ton of videos there, tons and tons of training. In addition to that online training, we're also happy to do in-person training. I've given in-person training classes before. If that is the case, feel free to contact the weather office here and we'll get something set up for you. And we usually like to have a group of several people at least before we come out to do the training. But we're happy to do that. If we have the staffing and the time, which isn't always the case, but if we do, we can even help people find a good site to put their rain gauge, because you don't want to put your rain gauge too close to an obstruction. You don't want to have it right next to your house or under a tree or something where it'll affect the catch that you get, where it'll affect the rain catch. And there's more information on that on the YouTube channel as well. As I said, we could talk a lot about a lot of these smaller details, but for this webinar here today, I really just wanted to give a basic overview of what the program is about. Now that rain gauge that we saw a few slides ago, that plastic rain gauge, we do ask that everybody use that specific rain gauge. We want everyone to use the same equipment so that we're comparing apples to apples. Different gauges will give different measurements for the same rain. So we want everybody to be on the same page and to use that particular clear plastic rain gauge. And I went to the website where those are purchased, which is highlighted down there at the bottom of the screen on the right, and they're on sale right now. The website says they're normally $48. I've never paid that much for one, and right now they're on sale for 33 bucks. So there is a little bit of a cost involved, and I know that can be kind of a con for some people. Every once in a while, we'll have a surplus of gauges that we can give away, but that's pretty rare. We do ask that most people purchase them. We've also found in the past that if someone purchases their rain gauge and spends their own hard-earned money of 33 bucks or 48 or whatever on a rain gauge, they're more likely to actually use the gauge, take it out of the box, put it up, make reports, as opposed to a free gauge that we hand out. Those have a much poorer return rate. So buying your own gauge isn't all bad. So if you can scrape together the $33, that's what we would do. Now, other things are also available at that website, as I have written there: snow rulers, evaporation gauges, gauge parts. Other things are available as well. Oh, I should also say that for the basic rain gauge, all of the mounting hardware is included too. So all you got to do is have a screwdriver or a drill, and you can get that mounted. Everything else is included in the $33. The evaporation gauges are $255. So if you are interested in evaporation, perhaps you are on a farm and evaporation is very important to your livelihood, and you want to go for it and spend the money, we sure appreciate it. Last I looked, I think we only had 1 or 2 people in central Kentucky and southern Indiana who actually purchased these evaporation gauges, since they are so expensive. So compared to $255 for an evaporation gauge, $33 for a rain gauge, that's not too bad, is it? All right, a little bonus slide here. This is not CoCoRaHS related, but we wanted to throw this in here. This is Severe Weather Awareness Week in Kentucky. And as some of you may be aware, we had severe weather just last night. And we have a team in southern Kentucky this afternoon doing a storm survey on some damage not too far from Bowling Green. And there were 19 tornado fatalities, sadly, in Tennessee last night. So severe weather awareness is, of course, extremely important. We get severe weather in the Ohio Valley every year, and it's important to be prepared for that. So we've been sending out social media items on YouTube and Twitter about severe weather preparedness. Tomorrow is the tornado drill here in Kentucky, and that'll be at 10:07 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 9:07 Central. So even if you don't have a weather radio or won't be receiving the drill on your phone or on your radio, still, maybe make a note at sometime tomorrow. Practice your plan. Well, first of all, have a plan and practice it tomorrow. If you're at work, get everybody together and say, okay, well, what would we do if a tornado warning were issued? Or in your school or in your home. You got to have that plan in place. You got to know today, while it's sunny, what you would do when a storm comes, so that when that tornado approaches your location, you can snap into action and do what you need to do right away. Severe Weather Awareness Week for our friends in Indiana is March 15th through 21st, and their tornado drill is at 10:15 in the morning Eastern Time on the 18th. It's interesting to me that it's on the 18th. As a weather historian, weather history buff that I am, March 18th is the anniversary of the Tri-State tornado, which some of you may be familiar with. The Tri-State tornado was on March 18th, 1925, and went all the way from southeast Missouri all the way across southern Illinois and into southwest Indiana. And it's extremely unusual for a tornado to stay on the ground for that long. Modern researchers have researched the damage that that tornado did, figuring that it was probably just a family of tornadoes or a series of tornadoes, but nobody, to my knowledge, has yet found any indications of significant breaks in the path of that storm, that F5 tornado. So that was a big deal in weather circles. And then on the right there, you see our training schedule. So those for Spotter Talks. So at Spotter Talks, you can come and listen to a person from the National Weather Service speak about severe weather, and specifically how you can help us spot severe weather. So in addition to our citizen scientists who are helping with CoCoRaHS and giving rainfall amounts and snowfall amounts, we also rely on the public to give us severe weather reports. So you can go to a spotter class and be trained on how to identify severe weather and how to contact the National Weather Service when you witness severe weather at your location. That's what the calendar looks like right now. That's not necessarily all the talks. We may schedule more beyond what you see there. And that calendar is available at our website, weather.gov/LMK, or you can do weather.gov/Louisville if that's easier to remember, or weather.gov/Lexington is another option, and or weather.gov/Bowling Green also works if you don't want to try to remember LMK. And so at the top of our website, we have the calendar linked to, and you can click on the link and go to that calendar and see if there's a spotter class near you. They're very entertaining. We've been doing them for a long time. in addition to learning how to be a severe weather spotter, there's also just a lot of really cool weather information and cool weather pictures, and it's an entertaining evening in addition to being educational.